have only 10 minutes. And I'm going to restrict my comments to sex education curriculum as it relates to the grades 7 and 8. I'm glad there's a health and sex education curriculum. However, I believe this curriculum is very inadequate to inform and to protect our children. I'll summarize 5 areas of concern. The first is that as a medical doctor, I have a concern about the lack of accurate and adequately detailed information on sexually transmitted infections, STIs, which in the end leaves the impression that sexually transmitted infections are not a big deal. Some examples would be, there's no mention that silent chlamydial infection can result in girls never being able to have a baby. There's no mention that you can contract HPV, human papillomavirus, at your first experience of intercourse while using a condom, because HPV is not transmitted by fluids but by skin-to-skin contact. There's no mention that HPV is a known causative factor in cervical cancer. There's no mention that different types of intercourse carry different risks, that anal intercourse carries the greatest risk of sexually transmitted infection, and our teen girls are caving into increasing pressure to have anal intercourse as this is promoted by pornography. I think it's important for us to look more closely at what the curriculum says about HIV. Written as a teacher prompt in the curriculum, it says HIV is a serious viral illness that can be controlled with treatments. With treatment, the damage that HIV does to the body's immune system can be slowed or prevented. Today, when people get tested for HIV early in the infection and access HIV treatments, they can have the opportunity to live a near to normal lifespan. It doesn't sound so bad, really, does it? And to teens who are at the developmental stage where they think they're rather invincible, I would think it would sound like even less of a concern. But what are the facts about HIV? This curriculum needs to be more honest. It needs to explain that one may or may not live a normal length of time, but in either case, your life will be very different in significant ways. If you are infected with HIV, you should never have intercourse without a condom the rest of your life. You may have to adopt children. If you are female, you will not be able to breastfeed. You will have to take strong medications, 2 to 4 medications at a time for the rest of your life. The medication itself can damage internal organs. The medication has to be taken in a highly structured schedule, often more than once per day, not only to keep the viral load down, but also because if you miss doses, it can result in treatment failure because of viral resistance. HIV will restrict your ability to live in other countries. People with HIV are subject to residency restriction for chronic illnesses. So this curriculum's description of HIV is something that can be controlled with treatments so that you live near to normal lifespan significantly minimizes the reality of HIV infection, is misleading, and could decrease condom use. I didn't think that was the goal of the curriculum. This kind of vaguely optimistic information is perhaps part of the reason there's some evidence that condom use is down in teens and that HIV infection rate is rising among teens again. My second area of concern is that the scientific findings that clearly support the value of delaying sexual activity are absent from this curriculum. There is solid research evidence for delaying sexual activity, and I think our teens have a right to know the science. The risk of depression increases 3 times in teens who are sexually active. Suicide attempts go up 3 times in female teens and 8.5 times in male teens that are sexually active. There's no discussion of the documented increased risk of STIs from having intercourse as a teen because the skin on the cervix is more vulnerable to infection until the late teens and early 20s. It may seem like everyone is doing it, but the statistics show that 30% of age 15 to 17-year-olds have had sex, so 70% have not. There's no mention in the curriculum about the hormone oxytocin being released with sexual intercourse and petting, and how this establishes an intense attachment and bonding that will impair one's ability to make a rational decision about a relationship. Once you have sex, you are hormonally bonded, and it will be that much more difficult to end the relationship. My third area of concern is the omission of any mention of pornography. If this curriculum is about health and keeping our children safe, we need to be willing to focus, we need to be willing to discuss the risks of pornography, the mention of which is conspicuously absent in this curriculum despite research linking aggressive sexual behavior and rape to porn use. We need to be aware and informed that pornography in 2015 is different than it was 20 or even 10 years ago. It is more aggressive and degrading to women. Should not something be said about this in terms of risks? What are the research findings about pornography? Those who use porn have an increased acceptance of rape myths, for example, that women want to be raped or that women cause rape. They have an increased rate of sexual aggression, an increased risk of committing sexual offenses. They have an increased risk for difficulties in intimate relationships. There's an association between the age of first porn use and sexual risk-taking. Porn use is associated with a higher number of sexual partners and a lower rate of condom use. Given that this sex education curriculum has the goal of increasing safety, including increasing condom use, decreasing rape and sexual aggression, not educating teens on porn is a significant omission. I am well aware there's controversy around pornography. The pornography industry is the biggest moneymaker on the internet and a very powerful lobby group. But I would hope that the experts writing a curriculum for our children would be more concerned about our children than about supporting the image that pornography is fine. My fourth area of concern is the complete absence of any education around how to be safe given the sex trafficking industry in our country. Our teens need to be aware that there's a risk to the average Canadian teen, especially girls, to be trafficked. It is a myth that the girls who are trafficked are foreign. The vast majority are our own children. In October 2013, the RCMP published an excellent report on trafficking. And this report explains the risk is significant from age 14 to 22. That is from grades 7 and 8. Sex trafficking victims come from all walks of life. There's so many things to say about sex trafficking, and I don't have time. But I find it very disturbing that this curriculum, which is supposed to be all about safety, is silent on this risk. It is in grades 7 and 8 that we must tell our children about this risk. Education on the risk of being trafficked is parallel to educating our young children about stranger danger. The writers cannot possibly see this as unnecessarily scaring our teens when educators are already committed to warning very young children about stranger danger. Yet there's not a word about trafficking in this curriculum. The government has said that it is not going to enforce the prostitution law in Ontario, which means this risk for our children will go up, as the research is incontrovertibly clear that trafficking increases where prostitution is legal. My fifth area of concern is about worldview. This Ontario government acts as if those who oppose this curriculum have their heads in the sand and are standing in the way of progress. Well, I trust that it is clear that I do not have my head in the sand. In fact, on numerous crucial points, I would say that people in the government have their head in the sand. I'm concerned about the lack of ownership on the part of the government, that this curriculum is written from a certain worldview, a worldview that not all prescribe to. Many faiths have a religious worldview that has a teleological view of things, a view that there is a purpose to things, things including sex. Such a person might conclude that the scientific documentation of oxytocin release with sexual intercourse has a purpose. For example, to enhance bonding in a partnership that will increase the stability of the basic family unit so that children have a safe place to grow up. I would venture to say that many people with a religious worldview would see this curriculum as inadequate because it doesn't address purpose. I am not saying that this curriculum teaches about sex without a worldview. It does very much teach about sex from a worldview that sees purpose as irrelevant. For each of us has a worldview, whether we are religious or not, and when we speak or teach, we do so against the backdrop of a worldview. So in summary, why are the risks of HIV and STIs softened? Why are the advantages of delaying sexual activity not spelled out? Why is pornography not mentioned in this curriculum? Why does the curriculum not empower our girls to be aware and safe around the risk of being trafficked? These are glaring gaps if the purpose of this curriculum is to protect our youth in the sexual area. And I predict this curriculum may have the effect of decreasing condom use not increasing it by the way it glosses over the seriousness of sexually transmitted infections. I would like to know who the experts are who wrote this curriculum. I would like disclosure. Was there an expert involved in writing this curriculum who is involved clinically with adolescents? Someone who would have a real-world experience with the health issues of teens? Was there anyone on this committee who had a faith-based worldview? If not, this is a travesty of the democratic process. Why the big secret about who wrote this? In conclusion, I would not have my children participate in the sex education curriculum because it gives vague, inadequate, and in places misleading information. It does not acknowledge the reality of different worldviews and does not address the dangers of porn or sex trafficking. I do not believe the driving force of this curriculum is the safety of children, and I think the government should be honest with itself about the poor quality of the curriculum and withdraw it completely.
You have 1 minute left.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to speak because I actually sent a number of emails to my MPP, to the Ministry of Education, asking for input into this curriculum. And I was told to come to the Waterloo School Board because that was my school board. So I am very disappointed to hear what I'm hearing back, that you can do nothing about it and that sort of thing, because I was told by our government that that was how I could have a voice. It's kind of sad.